free to enjoy. Okay, so let me give you a little overview of where we're headed, give you a little outline. First of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my hopes and dreams being dashed. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit of some experience of mine with the Eucharist, a couple little stories. And then I'm going to give you a little brief history of Mars. Well, I should say brief history of exploration of Mars. And the future of Mars, some cool things that we've got on the horizon. And a dream reborn. Remember, the dream dashed will then be reborn. And then some perspective. So, let's start with my hopes and dreams being dashed. I was in high school once, and I have a story about being in high school. Yeah, I know, I can't believe I made it out either. So I was in high school, and I was, doing my thing, and I became enamored with astronomy for a couple of different reasons, but mainly because of the huge amount of mystery and unknown that there was in the universe. Just, there were so many questions that we had partial answers to, or no answers to, and that really amazed me, and I want to find those answers out. And I was drawn to it that way, and so I became more and more enamored, and learned more and more and more, and then at one point, I was like, all right, I'm going to be an astronaut. That's what I'm going to do. So it was my junior year. I decided, okay, this is what I'm going to become, an Air Force pilot, because that's a really good direct line. Do Air Force pilot, you do that really, really good, and then you go become an astronaut. It's something like that. I don't know exactly, but that's what was going to happen. And so this dream was going hard, really strong for 2 weeks. And I looked up on the website, I was doing some research. I was like, I'm going to be an astronaut. What are the qualifications to be an astronaut? And I was reading, physical qualification. Well, of course, I've got physical qualifications. And I was reading, I was like, oh, what? And there's a height limitation. I was too tall. It's like, yeah, it's 6'2", actually. I think it's 6'2", I think. I know I was too tall, because I'm 6'3" and 3/4, thank you very much. But anyways, I was definitely way too tall for their requirements. So, my options at this point were cut my legs off, or have my dreams dashed. So, as it turns out, these dreams were, the hope and dream of being an astronaut were dashed. And this was kind of a big moment for me, realizing I couldn't do this. As you are in high school, maybe a little, I was doing this dream for 2 weeks, guys, really, literally 2 weeks. I didn't even look at the requirements before I started dreaming, I was just, yeah, okay, great. So, dreams dashed. And the big reason why I wanted to be an astronaut, who doesn't want to be an astronaut, but I wanted to go to Mars. I knew that this was in the future planning, and this would be awesome, and I wanted to land on Mars. I wanted to be one of the astronauts that got to go to the surface of Mars, and I was really big into that stuff. But, as it turned out, what I ended up doing was taking my love of astronomy, taking my love of physics and understanding the universe, or wanting to understand the universe, and I went and got a physics degree, and astronomy and math degree too. They were minors. Great. So, while I was in college, let me tell you a little bit. Is it good? Good. Do I need to? No? Everybody can hear me well? Yeah? Great. Awesome. So let me tell you a little bit of a college story. And this may seem like it's entirely different than what I was just talking about. And you're absolutely correct. It is. It's a different thing. Might be an aside, but really, no, they're quite related. So, I could go into a lot of detail about my faith, but a big piece of my faith, of course, is our faith, is the Eucharist. And the mystery of the Eucharist, the unknown of the universe, and a lot of just the wonder of creation that I have when it comes to my love of astronomy and physics. I have very similar feelings when I think about my faith. When I think about what draws me deeper into my faith. So my first year at Virginia Tech is where I went. I wasn't. I was a youth apostle. I was learning a little bit more about my faith, and but I had this encounter with the Eucharist that was pretty profound for me, and this is really a big. So at Mass, I was at Sunday Mass, and our priest, our priest who was visiting, actually a visiting priest from Nigeria, he had taken over the ministry program. Our priest, something happened, they had to leave, but he was taking over, and he was saying Mass. And I was in the first pew as it happened that day, and I went up and I was maybe the third person to take communion from him. And so I took communion, I consumed the Eucharist, and then he grabbed my arm, pulled me back towards him, and he was dealing with a cold. He was very, very sick. He was coughing or sneezing, I can't remember, but he was really sick. He grabbed me, he handed the plate to me, and then turned around and walked away. I've never been a Eucharistic minister before. Never did the training, never ever done it. And so here I am in front of the altar, holding the platter. He's gone. I'm looking down, and I look up, he's out the backside, like he's getting something for whatever he's dealing with. And I don't know what to do, except for turn around and start giving out the Eucharist. Sorry. This moment was pretty cool. I'm tearing up remembering. This is funny. So of course I'm saying the body of Christ, the body of Christ, and I'm giving out the Eucharist, and I'm shaking. I'm shaking over, and I'm just continue to give out the Eucharist. And I just continue to shake. And then we're done, Mass is over, I go into the back, and I am just, I'm literally shaking. I don't know why. At the time, I guess I didn't know why, but I can't explain it other than just being absolutely filled with the Holy Spirit, just jam-packed with the Holy Spirit. And I'm just, there's too much, and it's just shaking out of me. It's all in there. So I had this for me was a really that's a really strong encounter that I had with the Eucharist. And I've had many others over the years. For example, this past summer, I'll give you just this one little story. I left teaching, as John alluded to. I left teaching, did it for 6 years. I really, really loved it, and but I wanted a change. I wanted to be closer to home. Wanted to be closer to family, closer to John's daughter, mainly, not John really, but just yeah. But. I didn't have a job though. We moved up and I didn't have a job. I sort of had a job, but that's another side. So I didn't really have a job at the time. And I was waiting and I was trying to get a job which eventually at Tesla. That was like what I really wanted. And I was going to Mass a lot during this time, praying for guidance and mainly just trying to find peace in the situation that I was in. But there were a couple of really great moments where, whether it was the day before an interview or the day of an interview or the day I was waiting to hear back or something, where I had really awesome moments with receiving the Eucharist, just knowing that this is all I need. I just need to receive this. That's everything else. That's okay. Like that, that's fine. Like I just need to receive this. And so there are a couple of really cool moments I had. Yeah, cool. So, the bump to Mars. All right, so Mars. We've got a really interesting think about what we've been able to do. I want to give you a little bit of perspective of what we've been able to accomplish on Mars in just like the last 100 years, how far we've progressed. I could give a whole spiel about the field of astronomy and astrophysics and how far we've come. But to give you a little summary, like 100 years ago, this was a map of Mars that was drawn by hand. So somebody had a telescope that they were looking through and then they were drawing it. Like we didn't even have pictures, a way of taking a picture of the surface of Mars. This was just somebody's bad drawing of Mars. And so we also there was very strong feeling that there's probably life on Mars. It's probably life and it's weird and who knows what's going to be there. And so lots of sci-fi about things on Mars. And that's just a good weird one. But there, of course, there's been lots of sci-fi about Mars. If you've read any of Ray Bradbury's stuff, anybody? Big fans? Yeah. That was another thing that pushed me to love Mars. It's those stories. Anyways, but this is actually one of the first pictures of Mars up close. This was a Russian craft took this picture. And it was cool doing a little bit of research over the history of what's been sent to Mars. There's a lot of Russian missions that were failure after failure after failure of sending to Mars. It was kind of hilarious. No offense to any Russians out there. But, sorry, I don't mean to be so anti-Russian. It's just, we were in the middle of the space race, and so it's kind of nice to look back, we beat them so many times. I mean, it's an important moment in our history. But this was a great picture from a Martian craft. I mean, that's pretty great, right? So that's a lot better, of course, than that, which is nice. This was taken in the 60s, I forget exactly when. But only a little bit later than that, this is a picture taken, I think, in the 90s from a US orbiter. This is actually Schiaparelli. If anybody has read the most recent Big Mars book. What was the name of it? The Martian. Yeah. Schiaparelli features pretty heavily in The Martian. Anybody read The Martian or seen The Martian? Great. It's good stuff. That's a really great book if you can find an edited version of it. There's just some language choice. Anyways, and then in the early 2000s, we finally got something to land on it and take a picture of the surface. This is a US lander, and it's like, hey, it's the surface, and it's right next to its foot. And then like we've progressed really, really aggressively, really fast, and then now we have robots taking selfies on Mars, right? So that's kind of cool to go from where we were 100 years ago to where we are today. Yeah. So right now there's a lot of stuff orbiting the planet. You can see those. The red are actually moons. The two moons that are around Mars are actually asteroids that were captured by Mars. And then everything else that orbits is artificial. And you see how the orbits are oriented? I might have a range. So Mars spins on its axis this way. Yeah? Did y'all see that? Everybody with me? But the orbit is this way. So that those orbiters can take pictures of the entire surface as it turns underneath. Does that kind of make sense? So they're all almost every single one of them is gonna orbit in that trajectory, so that they can essentially catch every part of Mars as it spins underneath. Just fun physics stuff. Cool. So on Mars now, there are a lot of landers. The Opportunity is still working. Opportunity landed on the surface in 2003 and is still working, which is insane. It's 50 times longer than the life that they expected or planned for. It's amazing that it's still working and still doing science and still sending back data. A lot of things have gone wrong with it, but it's able to just keep working. Like, all its hard drives died. Like, it started misremembering things, and so now it only works on RAM, which is kind of funny. So it's like it has no long-term memory. Can you imagine? It's this robot. What am I doing here? Just having these moments of like not having any idea. It's just kind of funny to imagine a robot with amnesia, just constantly, I guess I'll do this science thing. What is this? And then he reports back he doesn't have any memory at all. It's pretty funny. I guess I'll send this to Earth. I don't know what's going on there. But it's also traveled the length of a marathon, which you might be like, well, I mean, I could have done that since 2003 too. But it's cool that a rover, it's actually the longest distance any rover has ever traveled on any surface outside of Earth, which is kind of neat. Phoenix, this is a really cool lander. It's not operational right now, but it did some cool stuff right after Opportunity landed, just like testing soil and scooping it up, doing some cool science. But my favorite thing about the Phoenix lander was a picture taken while it was going to the surface of Mars. This is a picture from an orbiter shot of the spacecraft as it was landing on the surface. That little dot, you guys see that? Okay, I'll zoom in. See it? It's like, so there. Yeah, that little tiny speck. But that's crazy, right? I mean, we had something in orbit, and let's take a picture of it when it lands. That's cool. I mean, that's the little guy right here, and this is the parachute that's going out. Yeah, but parachutes are pretty limiting on Mars. Fun fact, it doesn't have a really thick atmosphere. It has an atmosphere, but not very much. So the parachute can't catch enough air to slow anything down. So you saw the original image was it having boosters fire to slow itself down at the end. That's pretty much what you always have to do to land on Mars, or put it in a giant balloon and have it bounce on the surface, which is what we did with Opportunity. But you really have to slow down using rockets because there's just not enough air to catch it. And Curiosity. So that was one picture. That was the one that we saw taken. Have you guys heard of Curiosity? Are you? Was some of us are curious enough, I guess? All right. No, this is a really cool rover. It's to give you an idea of the size. It's the size of a small car that we landed on the surface. And this is actually one of the coolest landing scenarios we've ever done. If you don't know this story, so it uses a heat shield to slow down, and then it throws out a parachute to slow down even more. But the parachute can't handle it anymore. So then the lander. It gets rid of the heat shield, and then the lander fires rockets, but they don't want to fire rockets too close to the actual car that we're putting on the surface. So they lower the car via a crane from the thing that's going to fire rockets, and then fire the rockets, lowering it down to the surface, and then unbolt the crane, and the rocket booster goes flying. It's kind of cool. And what's amazing about this is it takes 14 minutes for any signal to get from Mars to where we are, or depends on anywhere from 20 to 7 minutes. But so all of that had to happen without human interaction. So that was just kind of cool. All right, great. Yeah. So what have we discovered? We discovered quite a lot about Mars. There's no life there, though there's still a possibility that there is some sort of microbial life. At one point there was. But a big discovery is just how much water there is. We had no idea there was so much water. And it's really only in the last decade that we've been able to really figure that out. With Curiosity, it really put the nail, like, yes, there is water and it's everywhere. It's right underneath the surface and probably incredibly abundant. It's kind of amazing. So The Martian, it's a very fun side note. The Martian was written by a NASA guy, and it was written in a way that had to talk about, he had to create water. That was part of what he had to do to survive on the surface of Mars. It was really funny, like a critical point of the story was he had to make water to survive. But in reality, all he would have had to do was go outside and dig a hole to which is really amazing. Like, this story was written a little over 10 years ago, and it's already obsolete with how much we've discovered in just the last decade. It's kind of cool. Water. Maybe Mars could one day look like this if all the water that's ice right now, if we melted it, there could be oceans on the surface. And how can we do this? How could we melt all this water? Because it would be nice to have the water, it would be nice to have an atmosphere, so that we could eventually live there. My CEO, as I like to call Elon, had an idea.
People have called you the real Tony Stark.
Nope. Here it is.
Now, another thing that you are talking about is you sincerely think that we should go to Mars, that men and women should go to Mars.
Yeah.
Why do we want to go to Mars? It's uninhabitable.
It's very inhospitable, that's true.
It is. Like, you have to be in like domes and everything, and you're just
Initially? Yes.
Really? How long before we could turn Mars into some place where we could live?
It is a fixer-upper of a planet. At first you're going to have to live in transparent domes, but eventually...
Yes, we're going to be huffing each other's stank.
Yeah, but eventually you can transform Mars into an Earth-like planet.
How would you do that?
You'd warm it up. Just warm it up. If you
with
want
a blanket or with
So one idea to one idea to do this was we should just build huge factories that just emit greenhouse gases. Just do what we did here, just more aggressively, really aggressively pursue that. And of course you could use that as a side note, you do some creation of things for the benefit of the colonists, but really just put so much stuff in the atmosphere. There's some ups and downs about how to do this and how long it would take. Generations and generations of people that it would take of just pumping stuff out. Because the atmosphere is really thin. And part of why it might be thin is because there's no magnetic field on Mars. So we'd have to constantly regenerate the atmosphere. So part of the reason why we have an atmosphere is one, because we've pretty large rock. And things were spewed out into the atmosphere. But we also have a huge magnetic field that surrounds our planet that protects it from when the sun explodes and it shoots stuff at us a lot. And instead of stripping away our atmosphere, we get nice aurora in northern and southern lights. So you guys have heard of the southern lights, northern lights. Like that's a result of the sun trying to tear us apart. And our magnetic field saying, no, thanks. It's cool. Let's just look at pretty lights. But here, let's hear what Elon's idea is here.
Mars up,
there's
it's
the
a
fast
long way away from the sun.
There's the fast way and the slow way.
Okay. Give me the fast way.
The fast way is drop thermonuclear weapons over the poles.
You're a super villain. That's what a super villain does.
Yeah.
So I think it's a pretty good idea. But yeah. So that's a good illustration of what that might look like. An astronaut in the foreground and the nuclear bomb that he's setting off at the pole. It's both funny but also science. Okay, cool. So the next step, so we need to get people to Mars, and there are lots of plans to do that. I debated tonight whether or not to wear my SpaceX shirt, because although I work for Tesla, I like to pretend I work for SpaceX. I'm really close to it. But we need, the next step, the idea for Elon Musk, his motivation is multi-planetary species, so that if something happened on Earth, we'd have another planet, a backup planet. And that's a fun idea. It's going to take a lot of time, it's going to take a lot of work, but you need to build a home and you need to get people there and you need to get things started. But here's Elon's idea. I know, what's up with all these Elon videos? Do you like Elon or something? I do. I really do. All right.
Starting first with one ship, then multiple ships, then start building up the city, then making the city bigger, even bigger. And over time, terraforming Mars and making it really a nice place to be. But
Elon, it's funny. Elon is a great speaker, but also a terrible speaker. Funny mix of the two. Anyways, yeah. So there's a lot of hope and a lot of excitement, and with all of this. I had a dream reborn. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the Mars One mission. Did anybody ever heard of Mars One? So some of us may have, but Mars One was a program that was started several years ago. And the idea was, all right, let's get a colony on Mars, but we can only send people there. We can't bring them back. So to save money, because there's nothing on Mars, like fueling stations, you have to take all the fuel with you, right? So remember how we had to land those landers on the surface of Mars? That's really easy when the lander is really tiny. But when it's filled with people and filled with food for the people, because there's no food on Mars, you have a lot of weight that you have to slow down. So you have to bring a lot of fuel with you to slow yourself down. But that means you're bringing more stuff with you in the form of fuel, so you need even more fuel. Right, so you see where we're headed. There's a lot of fuel involved, and it's really expensive to get a lot of fuel that far. So Mars is very far away. The fastest we can get there is like 8 months. It's far, and that's like traveling really, really fast. It's traveling at like 26, kilometers a second or something like that. Takes 8 months. Okay. Yeah, like I said, it's so far away, it takes minutes for any signal to get back to Earth. Anyway, but the idea is that Mars One, okay, we'll save money, we'll just send people and stuff, we won't send any fuel. Right? They just land and they have a colony. Great, and they'll never come back. And so I thought, yeah, I'll apply. Yeah, I'll do that. Of course, I'm married at the time, I didn't really think it all the way through, but I applied. I was like, this is it. This is my dream reborn. I am doing this. So I applied. I wrote essays. I made videos. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's good stuff. No, they're terrible videos. The essays are very good. And I was very excited. And it was a lot of fun. But now, there's a moment, though, in all my excitement, that I remembered something kind of funny, and to kind of bring it a little bit back around, and not that this, my priority, I think, was in the wrong place. Like, I had a fun idea, oh my gosh, of course I want to go to Mars. Mars is great. Mars is that's the best thing. Forgetting my wife and stuff. But I didn't have a son, so it wasn't that big a deal. My wife's not huge. Of course, that would have been, in the end, been a deal breaker for her. But she also knew, when we got married, she knew. That was actually something I told her before we got married. If I ever get a chance to go to Mars, I'm going to go to Mars. She did that. Anyways, okay, sorry, I'm getting distracted. But I did have this moment where I was thinking about going to Mars, and I had a realization that, I'd be missing something. And it kind of made me think a little bit about where I was, what were my priorities? And the thing that I would be missing was the Eucharist. That I wouldn't have Mass. And unless, I guess, of course, they sent a priest, but I'm not sure they were going to do that. So, I guess part of my thinking here is that no matter where we go, no matter what we do in life, whether it's go to Mars, or whether it's, do finals week, or whether it's having, Christmas meals with family, any adventure, right, that our Apostle Andrew wanted to teach us how to live our life as an adventure. Any adventure we need to bring Christ with us. We need to have Christ with us. And so I guess that's really, that's what I'm getting at here. That no matter where we go, we need to bring him with us. Yeah, that's it. Here there are traditionally questions, a Q&A sesh. Yeah, cool. Any cues? Yes, Father.
My question is more on the technical level of the travel.
Great.
If they would it be possible to send some form of refueling station that would remain in orbit? That would then allow some sort of transportation that remained permanently in orbit, and there was some sort of nuclear power or something like that that's more sustainable.
Yeah.
Would that be a possibility? Or
Yeah. Awesome. So what's really great about there being a lot of water on the surface of Mars is that it makes making fuel on the surface of Mars far more possible. So water is H2O, right? So 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. And you really, to make fuel, you just need hydrogen, essentially. You can find everything else that you need, but to have the hydrogen locked in with the oxygen is awesome. So we thought that most of the hydrogen would have, evaporated away and been lost in space. Because hydrogen is something that in an atmosphere, it's the lightest element, right? It's number 1 on the periodic table, my chemistry majors. And it will go the fastest. It will move the fastest. So it's the first thing that can escape an atmosphere. So, but that it's locked and connected to oxygen and buried in the ground is really good for being able to build fueling depots on the surface. So we don't necessarily, that might be part of the plan to have it, that we would refuel a fueling station in orbit. And then whenever we set something up, they could then touch and then go back to Earth. Because that's how we'll refuel the thing that's going to go to Mars, too. We'll actually fill up in orbit around Earth in order to give ourselves enough fuel to go and land on Mars.
So the whole point of the SpaceX reusable was more for Mars than it was for Earthbound?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So so the SpaceX refueling, it'll be great. It'll have some nice uses on Earth, but it is mainly to get to Mars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Did you ever get an email back after you submitted the
That's funny. I did. Yeah. So I made it. I got some form of preliminary cut. So there were like 200,000 people applied. And so I made some, I don't know what the percentage was, but it was a large percentage of the 200,000 that made the preliminary cut. But I got that notification. I was like, yeah, I'm going to Mars. But then I didn't. No, then after that, I think I got an email notifying me that I didn't get it. After that, but yeah, it's okay. No, that's good. My wife's really happy about it, and I'm very happy about it too. Yeah, they're not even there yet, so. And also, Mars One plan is kind of a funny idea. If you haven't, their plan on mainly how to fund it was to get a whole lot of funding in order to make money later by making it a show that the entire world would watch. So, I mean, people would probably watch that, but like, my first jump when I really realized what they were hoping to do with funding was Big Brother on Mars. Like, so I thought that was funny. Yeah. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the problem of like not having the magnetic shield from
Yeah.
radiation.
Yeah.
What were some solutions that you found?
Just keep pumping atmosphere into the atmosphere. Like that would be the most. You can't restart the magnetic field. You could, like he was mentioning, living in domes. Like there'd be what you could have is temporary emergency places. So if atmosphere did get stripped away, you'd be able to survive in domes for times that, like while you replenish the atmosphere or something like that. But yeah, I haven't heard of anything because you won't be able to drill anywhere. You can't restart a core. The core is dead on Mars. Like our core is hot and spinning and awesome, and their core is dead. Yes.
Does your job at Tesla involve Mars?
No, I wish. No, sort of though. So, in a very yes, actually yes, Teresa, yes. The more that we drive electric, the more fuel we can put in spacecraft. So, yes. Yes.
If you had another opportunity to go to Mars, would you take it?
Yeah, because actually now the SpaceX plan is one where you come back. So, yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Let's say it's a perfect world and you actually make the cut to go. What do you see yourself doing once you get there? Like, is it similar to like your job now at Tesla, or like what would you see yourself doing, like engineer? Or...
I would mainly see myself doing this. But in terms of job, yeah, I would think that in order to be a person that gets sent, I would be using, more of my physics. I would be using more of my physics role as maybe engineering or just pure research or something like that. Yeah. We'll need research on the surface of Mars too. Yes?
You mentioned that when you were waiting for your applications and things like that your Eucharistic, you had stronger connections with the Eucharist. So what was it like as you were waiting to hear back from your application to Mars? Did you have a special experience there too?
That's a great question. No. And I think maybe, that wasn't...
Can you repeat the question?
Sure, yeah, the question is, did I have a similar experience in terms of my connection to the Eucharist while I was waiting for my Mars 1 application to come back? And yeah, I think, not that I can remember. It wasn't something significant. Cool. Yes?
So when SpaceX goes to Mars, is that land going to be like a U.S. colony, or is that just going to be SpaceX owned?
I think it depends on who funds SpaceX. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I wonder if it would be an international effort or if it would be mainly U.S. But I know part of the Mars exploration mission that SpaceX pitched was essentially, we want here U.S. government, do you want it? You can pay for it. This is what we can offer. This is what we can make. And so I would think I'm not I think there's a certain rules about Mars. Mars isn't it's an international territory, like every.
You can't claim sovereignty.
Right. You can't claim sovereignty of anything in space. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sure, yeah, that's true. I guess that treaty could be dissolved. It's a treaty. It's a UN treaty, I think. Yeah.
The Treaty of the Galaxy.
Any other cues?
I got a question.
Yes.
You mentioned the greenhouse. How does pumping greenhouse gas? How would that create livable atmosphere?
Sure. So the first idea would be you pump it full of greenhouse gases so that the planet would get hot. Then what that would do is it would melt all the ice water. And when you melt the ice water, then you get even thicker atmosphere and you get more water vapor in the atmosphere too. You'd have to be aware how you terraform the planet. Like as you're pumping greenhouse gases into it, you'd also need to figure out a way to pump oxygen into it. Maybe it would be something that could be released as part of the water, like melting, but we need to get oxygen in the atmosphere too in order for it to either support plant life or human life. So that would just be part of the equation of what we're pumping into the atmosphere. Is that? Yeah. So the main thing is make it hot enough so that liquid water could exist on the surface, and make it have enough pressure so that when we take off our spacesuits, the water inside of us doesn't just evaporate into the air and we die. Yeah. Cool. Thank you guys.
So just a couple announcements real quick. So tonight we'll be cooking for the Lamb Center. And you can talk to Lisbeth for that. Sorry, Lisbeth.
It's the last one.
It's the last one. So make sure to come out and help cook for Lamb Center as well. We will also be delivering it tomorrow at 11:15. So if you'd like to help out tonight by cooking or help in delivering tomorrow, talk to Lisbeth. Saturday, we'll have a corner pocket. We'll have a corner pocket rented out for everybody, and we're partnering with Ivy this time. InterVarsity, thank you, John. We're partnering with InterVarsity, so we're collaborating on this event, and free games all night, pool, ping pong,